Hi, my name is Koku with blackfilm.com, and I'm here with Aurin Squire, co-executive producer of the Paramount Plus series, The Good Fight. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
I am so interested in speaking with you because, I mean, even just in looking at your credentials, I'm just like, who do I even know that can say these things? And so I saw the Juilliard School, I saw New School University, and Northwestern University. How are you retaining all this, doing all this, working all hard like this? What is going on in that mind of yours?
Well, I went to Northwestern to be a journalist. A computer error put me in the film department. I went to go switch my major as a freshman, and the School of Communications dean talked me out of it. And so I stayed as a film major, learning film and TV, while getting experience as a reporter as my job as a student, and then in between summers working for different newspapers. And then when I finished, I developed a bug for writing scripts as a film major. And someone said, well, if you want to write scripts, the best thing to learn is to write theater. Because if you learn how to write plays, you can write everything else. So, and then I said, well, what should I do? They said, well, you should find an excuse to get to New York City. I said, the easiest excuse is to go to grad school. So I was like, great, I'll go to grad school. New School gave me a scholarship, and I was able to learn intensely for those 3 years by just cramming myself with as many plays as possible, seeing as many things as possible, and writing as many plays and getting them produced. And then I took a break to take care of my mom and dad who were sick for a while continuing to work as a reporter freelance to earn money and getting occasional commissions. And then I got into Juilliard for playwriting. And I happened to be in the office one day at my agent's headquarters when the TV agents were passing through from London back to LA. They were passing through New York City. So I met them, we had a brief conversation, and they set up meetings. That was sort of the coincidence, all these coincidences of like a computer error.
Serendipitous
Being in the office when the TV agents are passing through, them asking like, well, would you like to work in TV? And I was like, yeah, I was a film major. They're like, oh, we thought you were just theater. I was like, no, I was a film major undergrad. I just I do theater now. So that was why there's all that zigging, zagging. And while at Juilliard, as well as at New School, and even now I continue to write articles for different magazines and newspapers just to keep that muscle fresh and keep it, exercise it every once in a while.
I wonder for you, what's more challenging or maybe more interesting, or if everything is even equal, because when you're talking about print journalism, that's entirely a very different thing than is executive producing or is screenwriting or, writing for plays. I mean, what do you think is your, even though a lot of things kind of got suggested to you, what do you think could be your first love?
I think my first love was radio journalism growing up. And growing up in Miami, where Caribbean radio is very big. And you had these amazing larger than life radio personalities like Randy Rhoads, Rick and Suds, Neil Rogers, Phil Hendry, and then Larry King, who started off in Miami.
Yeah.
So Miami had this base of like huge radio reporters and entertainers who could sit down in front of a microphone and talk for 3 hours and tell a story that was hilarious. And they didn't need writers like some big personalities on the radio. It was just their own wit, sparkling personality.
Off the cuff, yeah.
Off the cuff, and then mixing it with callers and storytelling. So that was what got me interested in the word, the spoken word, was literally removing the visual and just having the word coming through the radio as my dad drove us to school. Or then when I got my own car, I would drive myself to school in high school or drive back, like the word as it exists in its raw form, just coming out of a radio.
Yeah.
And so the closest thing to that is dramatically is theater. It's like the word in a darkened space, illuminating the space for all the audiences to see. But the easiest way to spread it dramatically is TV and film, where, I love theater. It is very much like a poetic form where you are the artist. It is your word. And in TV, it is more about building the engine and all the different people involved, from costume, set, light, all the different people involved to make the engine of a show work. But so many more people see a show, even a show that's not even successful. Millions more people see a show than will see a play.
Well, yeah, that's true. They have to get to the play. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's a good point. I didn't think about it like that. Now I want to ask you this though, because this relates to the good fight. I mean, with all you've accomplished, and you think about it, like when actors they go and audition, they submit a tape. When this particular environment now, that could be a self tape, and they hope to be on a project, or they hope that someone like yourself could even call them for a project. What is it like on the other side of things where, I mean, look at the cast that you have here. I mean, you've got Michael Boatman, Yambi Nyambi, John Slattery now, Andre Brower, of course, Audra McDonald, Christine Baranski. I want to name everybody, but I mean, I'm just saying, like when you look at the people that are here, these are not people that just take jobs just to take jobs. They very specifically are very intentional and very deliberate about the work that they want to associate with their names, because these are actors. They're not just doing it, right? So what does it feel like for you when you know that you can assemble this kind of cast?
Well, hats off to Mark Sachs, the
Mhm.
the lead casting agent in the department for CBS, who helped assemble the cast, as well as Robert and Michelle King. I
Mhm.
think it starts at the top with those people in charge, and the fact that Robert and Michelle King live in New York City and actively see theater. And so
Mhm.
the room is half playwrights. And then when we go see plays, we will say, I saw an incredible actor this weekend, or I saw this, or I saw that.
So you're
And then,
always kind of scouting.
yes, you're
Mhm.
always like, oh, I saw,
Mhm.
something incredible, and this person might be good down the road for this. I
Mm.
know for Chris Jumbo, I happen to be seeing her show at Joe's Pub about Josephine Baker.
Mhm.
And in the audience later on was Robert and Michelle King, who then cast her in the last season or two of The Good Wife. That was because they went out and saw the play that
Mhm.
she was in. So it's kind of wonderful that that still exists, the grassroots phenomenon of you
Mhm.
seeing someone live in person, breathing the same air as them, intermingling with them on a stage and in a space, as opposed to a audition tape, and then seeing that same sparkle on a screen. And I think a lot of the actors who are attracted to the show have that theater background. And
Mhm.
when they come and work on The Good Fight, they know that it's going to have that theatricality in the writing, and it's going to have that robustness with the word that is reinforced by the King's vision. So I think that's why we were able to assemble such an outstanding cast. And
Mhm.
the funny thing is, they could all sing, and we're always like, man, if only we could do a singing episode. But you might be surprised at the end of the season.
Look, I mean, like you're so like illustrated with your words too, and just how you paint this picture here. I'm pretty sure you can find a way to incorporate something. You'll figure it out in the best way. But I think something I was curious about too. Again, just speaking to the level of acting on this cast, I thought it was an interesting decision to introduce new characters in the final season. So when you decide to bring on these characters with Andre Braugher and John Slattery now, what informs that? And I mean, does it ever feel like a challenge because you packed this into a set amount of episodes, which is 10 episodes, correct?
Yes.
It's like, how do we, sort of paint a picture of these characters in a shorter amount of time? They don't have the same, even like behind the scenes, they're not the same family as everyone else is. How do we incorporate them and make them feel welcome as well?
Well, there are a few helpful factors
Hmm.
with Good Fight, unlike The Good Wife,
Hmm.
which is in this show, it is more absurdist.
Hmm.
It can take more absurdist turns. Number
Hmm.
two, we very rarely go home with our characters. The
Hmm.
world, I mean, occasionally you'll see, a snippet of Liz's life. You'll see a little hint of Christine Baranski's life, but really the world is their work
Yeah.
and is in the office. And then number three, when you have the world as their work, then you just have to set up either psychosexual tension
Hmm.
or mostly like work tension that are based upon ethics and beliefs. And when you drop someone in new, a new character like Richard by Andrew
Hmm.
Brower, you just have to triangulate and go, okay, Liz does this.
Hmm.
Steve Baranski, Diane does this. Then Richard, Andrew Broward has to do this so that they are in dynamic tension with each other. Uh,
Mm.
you never want to do something where it's, like a soap opera where people are throwing glasses of wine in each other's face and vowing vengeance. But at the same time, we don't want to make it, a comfy, everyone sipping cocoa and being nice to each other. It's finding that dynamic tension
Yeah.
of people you respect,
Mm-hmm.
but challenge you and you don't always agree with, and have to find that compromise. And so you're always trying to figure out, when you're introducing a new character, who do they like, who do they not like?
Mm-hmm.
And how do they
Mm-hmm.
mask that? And how then will they get their work done? How does who they like and how they don't like conflict with what they're trying to get done? And putting those characters in as uncomfortable position as possible in order for them to achieve their goals.
Mm-hmm. And so we're talking about character tension and different environments and things. So I understand that. But let's also talk about, because The Good Fight, you also tackle like headlines and like really could be weighty issues and headlines of the day. So how do you decide what you want to talk about as far as the subject matter themselves? Because we're talking about now where we place these actors, who they're going to have tension with, who they may get along with. But what about the subjects themselves?
I think it is based upon any idea that sparks debate, laughter, jokes within the room is an idea worth pursuing. And any idea which everyone sits there and goes, we all agree, then that's not an idea. Even if it's an important idea, even if it's an important story, if there aren't any turns or there isn't any conflict, then I kind of go like, we kind of all look like, well, you know,
Yeah.
all right, well, that's something we can all preach to each other and feel good about ourselves, but it's going to be boring to write it. And if it's boring to write it, it'll be boring to watch it. So usually, and if it's boring to pitch it, it'll be boring to write it, which means it'll be boring to watch it. So usually it all sources back to people sitting around a table and trying to entertain each other with the wildest, most controversial, but sane opinion.
Right.
So within the realm of sanity, but like an angle you wouldn't expect.
Understood. And I mean, I guess I wonder too, because I think so many people are interested in what happens in like a writer's room or behind the scenes, because we, of course, we become familiar with the actors. When you're collaborating with those people, as you said, that you, with a show like this, you don't want to necessarily be all in unison, like, yes, guys, we have a great idea. Okay, good. But like, as you're pitching, I mean, or as people are growing into their role as wanting to be head writers or even assistants or whatever the case may be, you know, what do you think that people can work on as far as confidence and as far as being better pitchers in that sense? So they're not coming to the room with all these like, oh, come on, there she goes again, you know?
I mean, one of the most helpful tips is, if I'm not sure, I write out the idea like a joke, set up punchline. Once you have those set up punchline, then you can expand it out to preface, set up punchline. And usually you pitch it with why you're excited about it. And if you can relate it to something personal or relate it to something in the media, a lot of times we reference movies is shorthand to just explain a complex idea. We're like, it's like this. You go, oh, okay. But here's a twist. You know, here's a twist on this thing that we assume that's in the culture or in the zeitgeist. So a lot of times having that reference point means watching a lot of movies and TV shows, reading a lot of books, having that literary and as well as visual awareness to cue certain things up, having a curiosity to continue to read newspapers and magazines every day and find those articles that are in the gray area, and then finding the personal thing about that gray area article that relates to you and why this is passionate from your perspective, generally improves a pitch. You know, and if you get 10% of your pitches in, you're doing a great job. But usually you're pitching, I think the most successful New Yorker cartoonist in history said he started a graph of successful pitches. His most successful year, he's the most successful New Yorker cartoonist ever. He said he had a 7% success rate.
That was the most. So you just have to keep going. Yeah.
So 93% failure.
It just sounds statistically, like if you're in sales, you're not going to keep the job. So, but if you're in writing, then it's encouraging. So
even in sales, I mean, I did sales for a very short window. If you're in sales and you have a 20% success rate, make it, but you have to be out there a lot.
Constantly pitching. Yeah.
But yeah, that is the ideal. That was, you know, when I started off in a room, it was as a staff writer, and I said, one good idea a day. Try to have one good idea a day that makes someone bored. And then if I had that sometimes early in the morning, the rest is gravy. The rest is like, okay, I can say whatever. I got my one good idea. And then when I got promoted, it was like, okay, let's try to have two good ideas, maybe one before lunch. And then you sort of start stacking that. And the different flows of the room, when to fit in, when to jump in. when to rip off of someone else's pitch, if it's something, and when to sort of offer an alt
Yeah.
to a pitch. So those are generally some of the beginning tactics, but most importantly, it's always listening and being in rhythm, like an improv group. You're listening for the yes and to be in rhythm with other people.
Would you suggest writers also join improv? I mean, do you even act yourself?
No, I mean, I went to New School Actor Studio, so all the writers and directors had to act.
Had to just, okay.
So we had to take acting classes, and then afterwards, I did improv because I was writing for an improv group. So they said, if you're going to write for us, you have to do it. So I did that for like a few months. So I learned how truly difficult improv is and excruciating. But I think if you learned improv, it couldn't hurt, and it probably would help a lot to have that yes and rhythm, and to know like, oh, here's how I'm going to pass the ball or keep the energy going.
I thank you so much for your time. I'm just going to ask you one last question because this is very, very important. You've lived in some pretty significant places. I want to know, if you had to choose between Miami, Chicago, or New York, where would you stay?
New York.
New York. He's like, oh, you know, New York. You know.
I like all the cities. I like LA. I like Chicago, Miami. But it's no question, New York. As far as,
without a doubt. Okay.
As far as culture, as far as not living in a one industry town, and people hungry. You'll meet random people in New York who are pouring your coffee, who have like a PhD.
That's true.
Archivist for like a Puerto Rican archive under college.
Right, driving Uber, these things. Yes.
The amount of interesting, rich, layered people you meet. Because New York is just so packed and dirty and messy that like just meeting all the messiness of life, which makes for good inspiration.
Yeah, no, I can imagine, especially with the way that you think. And I know you have to run. I want to thank you so much for your time again, guys. I'm here with Aurin Squire, co-executive producer here of the Paramount Plus series, The Good Fight. They're in their final season. It's a series finale, I'm sorry. And I think that this conversation was just so enriching, and I learned a lot. And I may now pick up a pen and write something.
Please do. It always starts with that.
I don't want you to shoot me down though. Like, what the heck was this?
No, my roommate from college was an actress from Columbia. She kept asking me to write stuff for her, and I was like, "Why don't you write stuff?" Why don't you do it? And then she went to Juilliard for playwriting, and now she's a co-executive producer for a sci-fi show on Apple called Invasion. But she started off as an actress who wanted people to write for her, and I was like, "You have a voice. You just need to develop it." You know, and she's gone on to work on over 10 TV shows as a writer, and her plays produced around the country.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Aurin. I really appreciated speaking with you. I truly learned something today.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Keep writing.
Well, I want to keep thinking, writing out. No, I'm just kidding. But
thinking is writing.
The last thing I'll say before they, get all upset, I want to, especially your PR here, is one of my lovely, lovely friends. But I think that, your take on literacy and just keeping yourself informed with the world and how that informs your creativity, that is the most important thing that anybody, can possibly say. Like, please just pick up a book, understand what's happening, pick up a newspaper, read, watch something, just stop taking in like just garbage media. So that's great.
Be a voracious consumer of life.
Yes.
Movies, TV, and your family, being in the world, being a voracious, passionate consumer of stories and characters and people and news articles in your life and what you're seeing in art.
Thank you so much for that. It's been a great message. Thank you. Take care. If you want to see more content like this on blackfilm.com, make sure you like, subscribe, and ring that bell.